Hey everyone, it's Guillaume from Startup Basecamp. Welcome to Tech for Climate podcast. During the show, you will have the opportunity to meet the best climate tech founders, investors, experts from Silicon Valley and around the globe. They will share with you their stories and personal journey in this growing industry, giving you some insights on the ecosystem to hopefully help you to take part in the climate change fight and benefit from the opportunities that it can also represent. The podcast is divided in two small interviews. During the first part, you will get to know our speaker, their perspective on the climate crisis, and how climate tech is changing the game. The second part of the talk will be for our members of the community who will learn from the speakers their secret sauce on how to, sharing with you their unique expertise on various topics as fundraising, management, strategy, and so on to help you to become a better leader in your field. Let's go for the show. Hi everyone, today's guest is Ryan Shearman, co-founder and CEO of Aether Diamonds. During this episode, we'll have an interesting conversation with Ryan to learn more about how they are making the world's first carbon negative and truly sustainable diamonds using CO2 capture in the atmosphere. He will walk us through the story and the why behind Aether Diamonds, how with the unique process they developed in their labs, they are able to produce stones made from the air, which are just as real as mined diamonds. He will also explain to us how he made the steps into the climate tech industry, which hopefully will help you to take the right steps too. During the second part of the show, which is accessible to a member of our community, Ryan will share with you interesting insights on his fundraising experience and his view on the climate tech ecosystem today. Ryan, welcome to the show. Hi, Ryan. Welcome to the show. We're very excited to have you here for the podcast Tech for Climate. So before we start to go a little bit deeper into Aether in itself, would love to hear a little bit more about your story, your background. I saw that you're also like a previous founder, so you have experience in that in different field as well. And then maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what is Aether and the why behind it.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. My journey in the world of entrepreneurship began in 2013. So this was following several years in the fine jewelry industry. I started working on a passion project. I'm an engineer by education. And I had a project that I wanted to work on, mostly for myself, that ultimately became a business, almost by accident. And that set me down a path that led to me being where I am today in this chair, talking to you. And it really was born out of a desire for me to continue creating, just as I have in my career while working for others, innovative consumer products. I think most of what I've focused on in my career is bringing things to various consumer markets that are new and exciting. And, that's ultimately what led me down the path to building my first venture-backed business. This was a company creating connected safety products for predominantly the motorcycle market and then tangentially several outdoor sports markets, which we grew to a consumer footprint in over 130 countries over the span of 5 years. That company was sold in 2018, and I was looking to the future, trying to understand what was I going to do to create my own legacy. At the time, I was getting very interested in the world of climate, this resurgence, this climate renaissance that's happening right now, climate 2.0, as many people have started referring to it, and it occurred to me that that was an area where my talents, my efforts would be best directed. This is the way I now have a son, I have a 7-month-old son. And the way I really envision building my legacy is by leaving a positive footprint on the environment, leaving this planet a little better than it was when I arrived here. And that's ultimately, part of the initial, thought process behind what got Aether started and why we founded the business. And And here we are 3 years later in market, getting ready to have hopefully a breakout year in 2021 and having exciting conversations like this one.
Fantastic. But I understand you also, the background in terms of jewelry business and everything, but like why, I would say, like why growing, or growing diamonds in itself. I guess it's a very interesting and exciting stone, probably the most famous in the world. But why taking that leap and going into that direction?
So in 2018, when I knew that I wanted to start something that was climate oriented, I started really looking at what I could bring to the table.
Yeah.
What was I good at? What skills had I developed over my career? It's one thing to have an idea and run towards it. I was, in a sense, almost looking for an idea. I knew that I wanted to do something impactful. So how can I maximize that impact? Well, I can do that by leveraging things that I already know how to do, so I can move quickly and effectively. And we started that process, my co-founder and I, really just by having conversations. He was a former colleague of mine. He had relocated to Bangkok, so he was living in Thailand, and there's a roughly a 12-hour difference, and we would have conversations to talk about different business ideas. And we both had worked in the jewelry industry, and we remarked on one particular conversation. Wouldn't it be really interesting? We have all of these greenhouse gases that are warming our atmosphere, causing global warming and really large scale climate destabilization. What if we could pull carbon dioxide, which is the largely the greenhouse gas that we need to be paying the most attention to. It's not as volatile as methane, for instance, but there's so much more of it. Methane is much worse for the environment. Its insulating factors is larger than CO2, but methane is unstable in the upper atmosphere. So as it gets released into our air, it breaks down faster than CO2. CO2 is with us for many decades, upwards of almost 100 years before the CO2 molecule starts to break up naturally. So, for the lifespan of a human being, for all intents and purposes, CO2 is up there forever, right? So we need to not only mitigate emissions, but actually start pulling down carbon. We have already put too much carbon into our atmosphere, and if we don't actively start removing that, we're going to be in trouble. It would be impossible to hit our goals with respect to average global temperatures rising, keeping that to 1.5 to 2 degrees C, and ultimately we realized carbon dioxide and carbon in general is not inherently good or bad. Where it is really, really matters. And carbon dioxide is molecularly, it's not that far off from crystalline carbon, right? Could there be a way where we could extract carbon from the atmosphere and grow crystalline carbon, otherwise known as diamond? And, my co-founder and I, with our backgrounds in high-end jewelry and engineering and material science, felt that we had the skill set necessary to go and chase down a crazy problem like that. In the beginning, we didn't even know what the business opportunity looked like necessarily. We didn't really know what the environmental impact opportunity looked like. We were excited just by the story, by the idea of making a diamond from thin air. That felt to us impossible. If we could do that, that would be magical. And that was what kind of got us moving and motivated in the early days. And then only as we got into the problem did we realize, wow, there's a fantastic business opportunity and the opportunity to have a substantial impact on the environment. The diamond industry globally is really harmful to the environment. I mean, there are a number of well-known human rights concerns with diamond production, and those concerns haven't gone away. Many people think that the issue with conflict diamonds and blood diamonds is a thing of the past, and it is a major part of the history of this industry, and it has not completely gone away. Now, the conditions on the ground in parts of the world where this is happening have evolved, but they have not, completely disappeared. And it's important to us that we look at that as a major factor. So the human rights side of things is a factor for us, and should be for anyone who's buying a diamond. But then the environmental one is something that's often overlooked. So we believe that by extracting carbon from the atmosphere, turning it into the world's first carbon negative diamonds that directly sequester atmospheric carbon. Every atom of carbon that makes up our diamonds comes directly from the atmosphere. If we can
Mhm.
do that and scale this business and scale our impact, would it be possible for our little company to pull more carbon out of the atmosphere than the entire global diamond trade produces on an annual basis? And we think so. We actually think that that's an achievable goal within a 10-year time frame. So if you ask, depending on who you ask and what data you're looking at, it's
Mhm.
somewhere probably between maybe 12 and 15 metric million tons of, let me say that again. Depending on who you talk to, it's between 12 and 15 million metric tons of CO2 that the diamond trade puts into the atmosphere every single
Mhm.
year. That's a pretty significant total amount of emissions. And if we, as a single company, can remove over 15 million metric tons of CO2 from the atmosphere, then we will have offset the entire footprint of the global trade. And then at
Yeah.
that point, we can start taking more and more carbon out of the atmosphere to remove all of the legacy carbon that the trade has put into the atmosphere over the last century. That's our goal. That's one of the major underpinnings of our business model and how we're operating. We make a pledge that for every carat of our carbon negative diamonds that we sell, we will
Mhm.
draw down no less than 20 metric tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. Now, some of that carbon gets stored right in your stone, the beautiful piece of gemstone and jewelry that you're wearing. Some of it stays in the actual rough diamond material that the gemstone is cut from.
Yeah.
That will ultimately be used for industrial cutting and polishing applications. So nothing's lost in the production process. And there's a number of other ways that we're actively taking steps to make sure that carbon is being pulled down from the atmosphere and using that to create carbon sinks. In fact, I think a huge part of how we will do this at scale is sequestering carbon in other forms of solid carbon, graphite, for instance. So lots of things that we're doing on that front that are very exciting to me, and I really can't wait to see what type of impact we can drive as a business.
Mhm. So, and thank you, because I think you cover already like few of my question that were coming after. But before we go too deep in that, can you maybe walk us through the process, like in terms of like the carbon? How do you source that carbon, and how do you end up at the end to have these beautiful gemstones that then you can start to cut and put as a beautiful jewelry for all the beautiful women of this world, I would say,
Well, and men too.
and men too.
For us, I wear diamonds myself. I think between my ring and my necklace, I probably have several dozen diamonds on me at any given time. But for me, um, actually, let me rewind there. We can take that part out. I might want to take a different answer to this. There are definitely parts of the process that I can't share the details around,
Yeah.
as it's proprietary, and what we're doing is fairly unique in the market, and we need to protect some of the the details and nuance. But in broad strokes, it's a three-part process. Step one is to remove the carbon from the atmosphere. The
Hmm.
final step is to grow the diamond in the diamond reactor, and then the core element that's really important is what happens in between. How do we
Yeah.
take CO2 from the atmosphere and convert it into a usable raw ingredient that we can use
Yeah.
to make the diamonds, right? So we know, generally speaking, what type of feedstock can be used to grow diamonds, and we know generally what type of CO2 you can pull from the atmosphere and all the other elements and compounds that come with it. So that chemistry in the middle was where we decided to focus. We've made our process fairly agnostic to the source of the carbon. So instead of developing our own direct air capture technology, we could go and bolt on to different solutions that were being developed by leading startups in the space. So that's ultimately the way we went to market, was finding partners that are
Hmm.
directly pulling carbon from the air and taking that as an off taker, using that raw material to produce our proprietary blend,
Hmm.
essentially. So in order to grow a diamond in a laboratory, you need, most people use methane, right? CH4 is the chemical
Hmm.
composition of methane.
Yeah.
Today, methane comes from crude oil drilling, or it comes from fracking. So if you're making lab grown diamonds, regular lab grown diamonds, inherently it's never going to be sustainable if it requires fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So it was our vision that rather than pulling those hydrocarbons from the ground, we could pull the carbon from the air, and we could take water and we could split that water into oxygen and hydrogen, take the hydrogen and merge it with the CO2 to synthesize our own eco methane. So we produce essentially our first raw material that we produce is a carbon neutral eco methane that comes
Mhm.
from atmospheric carbon. Every single one of those carbon elements, carbon atoms in the hydrocarbon chain came directly from the atmosphere. So even if you burn this and you put the carbon back up, it's carbon neutral because it came from the atmosphere to begin with, right? And we're not combusting it in that manner, but we do take that hydrocarbon and we put it into our diamond reactor. And the blend is it's mostly methane. There's some other stuff in there as well, and that blend is proprietary and part of our
Mhm.
core IP. We inject our proprietary hydrocarbon mixture into this diamond reactor, and we have a special tailored recipe that works in conjunction with this to allow us to build a crystal of diamond up atom by atom, layer by layer. Um, if you would imagine when snow falls, over time the snow builds up. It's similar to that. When you inject the hydrocarbon into the reactor, you bombard it with microwave radiation. The hydrogen in the hydrocarbon chains excites into a plasma state, and then the carbon dissipates to the bottom. It lands on some small seeds of diamond, and because of the heat of the plasma, it's able to bind and grow the crystal matrix. And over the course of about 3 or 4 weeks, we get a big piece of diamond, and it comes out. When it's done, it looks like a burnt marshmallow. So you have to cut the edges off with a laser, and you're
Mhm.
left with a nice little cube, something like this. So this is a little cube of uncut diamond right here.
Wow.
And this piece is about a little over 5 carats. So once this is cut and polished, you can see it's all like kind of charred and black because of the laser. When
Yeah.
the inside is perfectly clear, so you cut and polish it, and it reveals a gemstone. So it's it's a really exciting process for me as an engineer, someone who's been working with, interesting materials throughout my entire career. It feels like magic when I hold that stone in my hand, knowing that this
Yeah.
came from the air. It feels like magic. So that's the process in broad strokes. I can't get too much into the details. I'm sure you can understand.
How long did it takes you guys to and the whole team to develop and find in a way the magic recipe that works and that in the future you can scale as well?
Years, and we haven't scaled yet. What we're doing right now is it's larger than lab scale. We are using production equipment, but it's a small production facility. We're not at a point where we've got rows and rows and rows of reactors growing many diamonds. We'll get there, and I think sooner rather than later. But getting the process to work took years. There are elements to this that are very specialized and require extremely precise skill sets, stuff that are not readily available just out of any university. The number of really intelligent engineers and PhDs that were associated with all the various steps of this process
Mhm.
is really quite amazing. And I've been super proud to work with such smart people on this project. And we've got a long road ahead of us, to increase production to the point where we're really driving a strong environmental impact, and hopefully doing it a way that allows us to grow our business sustainably.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, and maybe just like a small question because I was researching before the prior the interview and I mean I saw that synthetic or laboratory grown diamonds exist since like the 40s. Is there any difference between your process and I would say that process known since the 40s?
Yeah, so I believe it really wasn't until like 1954
Hmm.
where General Electric had great success with their first synthetic diamonds. They started experimenting in the 40s, but it really didn't work until the early 50s. And that experimentation was led by a scientist named Tracy Hall. And while he was the first to do it, GE did not treat him well. He ended up leaving the company. I think they gave him some kind of stipend, like maybe $10. Thank you, pat him on the back, and then he was kind of summarily dismissed from the company. And that technology still exists today. It uses a different methodology for creating diamond crystals called high pressure, high temperature. So they have these large hydraulic presses, and they put the various ingredients on the inside of the press, and they put a lot of pressure from all different sides and a lot of heat, and they try and emulate the conditions that were found in the Earth's crust billions of years ago, as the
Mhm.
planet was forming. And from there, they can make diamond crystals. These diamond crystals, however, are not that perfect. HPHT is good for making larger crystals, but they are more included. Their color is not as good. The technology stack that we and the methodology that we utilize is called chemical vapor deposition. So this particular methodology produces smaller crystals that are much higher in quality, and it uses the technology is just drastically different, and that's an important distinction. So
Yeah.
the technology is not the same as what was developed,
Yeah.
many over 50 years ago. CVD started coming around about 30 years ago, but didn't really hit commercial viability until maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And even still, when we started this company, the lab grown diamond market penetration was like just over 1%, maybe 1.5%. Today,
Mhm.
it's over 4%. It's almost 5. So there's been a lot of growth
Yeah.
recently. The last couple of years has been a lot of growth, which has been exciting to see. And at this point, we're moving towards a future where lab grown diamonds are kind of inevitable. And I'll tell you why. So when you open a new mine, you do geological surveys, you do core samples, you drill into the ground, and you have a pretty good understanding as to what's underground and what you're going to be pulling up, right? So if you know what's underground and you know what you're going to be pulling up, you can estimate how long that mining operation will be open, right?
Mhm.
Maybe there's 20 years worth of material underground, or 15 years, or 30 years, whatever it might be. So because those are all known quantities, we can look at all the different diamond mines that are operational today, and
Mhm.
we already know when they're going to close. So between today and 2040, 20 years or so, we know that 70% of all diamond mines that are operational today are going to be closed down. They're running out of diamonds, right? We had peak diamond output in 2017. Roughly a little over 150 million carats of diamond were produced that year. So
Mhm.
over the next 20 years, as 70% of diamond mines close, the global production volume of diamonds from the ground is expected to cut in half. So you're going to continue to see demand grow. Demand for diamonds grows every year, and it has continued to grow every year for over a century at this point. So demand is going to continue to go up, but supply is going down. So we need to introduce lab grown diamonds as a way of backfilling to meet that demand. And frankly, we can't make them fast enough. So this is a really exciting time to be getting into the segment of lab grown diamonds, because it's just going to be a growth market. We feel very excited about where it's going, and we're just bullish on the long term direction of the broader diamond industry as things continue to get cleaner and more responsible and more sustainable.
Can you speak us to us a little bit about maybe the economics of it? What are the margin that you're expecting, and how far are you into the process?
Yeah. So, um, cost is a factor of a few different things. Pulling carbon out of the air is relatively expensive when you do it with a machine compared to other natural solutions like reforestation, afforestation, mangrove development, things like that. So when you look at the carbon markets, if you look at reforestation, afforestation, you might be able to get 1 ton of CO2 for, depends on what size volume you're buying, but just a few dollars to maybe
Mhm.
$10 or $15 per metric ton. If you look at tech-enabled carbon solutions, direct air capture often costs hundreds of dollars per metric ton. So it's much more expensive. And that makes it challenging for these companies that are producing these carbon assets by removing carbon from the atmosphere. It makes it hard for them to commercialize. Who wants to pay $500, $600, $700, $1,000 for 1 ton of CO2 if I can get it for $5 somewhere else? So where we come in, we are an application layer solution that will help hopefully usher in a new era for direct air capture, in terms of commercial viability, because we don't have the same price sensitivity. 1 ton of atmospheric carbon allows us to go and produce millions of dollars worth of diamond jewelry. So if it costs me $1,000 a ton, I'm happy to pay that. because we can amortize that across all of the product that we're able to make. And that's really good for us to come in and plug in and help, play a role in the broader direct air capture kind of infrastructure. I think the way we look at it compared to like retail pricing, the reason we're able to do this is because our sustainable angle aligns with what consumers are looking for. We can charge not a ridiculous premium. I mean, there are other diamonds on the market that are much more expensive than ours, but ours are not cheap by any measure. It's certainly a luxury product, and we do view sustainability as a mark of modern luxury. So a consumer comes in and they buy our product, and that gives us an opportunity to make sure that we are, essentially investing money into the broader decarbonization space, which is great, and do it in a way where our unit economics are favorable. I can't go too into the details on some of that because it's a moving target. We're early stage. Our cost structure is not that great today, frankly. It's not cheap to make these diamonds. We spend a lot of money to make these diamonds. And that's okay, because as we grow the company, as we get more efficient, things will be better. And we have a line of sight into where our profit margins will be plenty sustainable for the business, which we're very excited about. But I think the one thing that I will call out is like the role that we play in the broader carbon market and helping companies that have direct air capture solutions, find off takers who are willing to sequester. A lot of times we hear about carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And it's almost like those are two different things. There's carbon capture and then utilization and storage. Just because you can pull carbon out of the atmosphere doesn't mean it's not going to go back up. You need to sequester it somehow. So that's where we come in. We really bolt on to the carbon capture side of things, and we are the sequestration partner. Every time we make a diamond, that carbon is permanently sequestered. It's never going to go back into the atmosphere. We've all heard the saying, diamonds are forever. That's not quite true from a scientific perspective, but diamonds are remarkably chemically stable for many, many, many years, well longer than any human being is ever going to live. So while diamonds are not forever necessarily, they're pretty close to forever. So this is a great form of storing carbon that we get very excited about. But then, like I said before, some of the carbon we're going to pull down from the atmosphere with our network of direct air capture partners is also going to be converted into things like graphite. As we head towards a world of electrification, we're going to need lots of batteries, and every battery for an electric vehicle uses graphite in its composition and in its manufacturing. The ultra high purity methane that we produce from atmospheric carbon is also used to make solar cells and silicon chips. So there are a number of applications beyond this consumer play that will come down the road, and that's how this company becomes much bigger. And that's the future that I look forward to.
Okay, that's kind of like the bigger vision of Aether, correct?
I don't say that we're a jewelry company. In fact, I often don't even call us a diamond company. I think Aether is a carbon technology company. We manipulate carbon atoms to our will. And ultimately, our mission and our mission statement is something that's really important. Essentially, we're looking to turn pollution into solution, and we do that in order to benefit the health of the planet and the lives of the people on the planet. So, by helping drive towards a future where we're relying on batteries for electric propulsion, for electric vehicles. And if we can contribute to that, it becomes a kind of a beneficial cycle that hopefully should continue to compound and allow us as a company to have a greater and greater environmental impact at scale.
So when you look at the diamond business in industry today, as you mentioned, only 4% is I would say, synthetic diamonds, as you guys are doing. This is mainly, I would say, under the monopoly of companies like the Bears. So how do they see you, and how do they? Did you guys have like any contact? Do you see that there is like a collaboration maybe to play together, or is it completely like two different worlds and you guys are kind of like the 2.0 of the diamonds, and they should maybe look after after them themselves?
I can say this. There really is no longer a monopoly in the industry. There used to be. There hasn't been in over 20 years, probably closer to 30 years at this point. The industry was heavily controlled by the De Beers company, and that has since broken up a bit. A number of factors for why that happened. But essentially, you now have like 3 or 4 big players, and then a smaller kind of burgeoning cottage mining industry. Artisanal mining is a thing. Uh, I argue whether or not artisanal is an appropriate label. But with that said, we know that these are companies that are aware of lab grown, that are focusing on lab grown, that are maybe hedging with lab grown. De Beers actually has spun up a small lab growing diamond operation as well. So they understand the future and where it's going. We're not in direct contact with any of them. Um, it doesn't mean that we won't ever be in contact with them, but for now we're just laser focused on growing our business, growing our impact,
Mhm.
growing our production capacity. We're very small still, so to say that we're on their radar, and who knows. If conversations happen someday. I mean, right now we're focused on talking to big brands, you
Yeah.
know heritage luxury brands that we all know and love. Those are the groups that we're excited to work with, more so than a De Beers, for
Yeah.
instance. I'm not going to sit here and just badmouth them. The general public knows, in broadly kind of what their involvement has been, and all the things that have happened kind of under their watch. And we're taking a very drastically different approach to how we produce diamonds, and creating a future for this industry that exists in the way we think it should.
Mhm. Can you tell me a little bit more about like competition? Do you guys have right now like a lot of competitors, or how do you see the market right now?
So, I hope that we inspire companies to start doing more to improve their environmental footprint. And it doesn't necessarily mean going as far as we have and becoming carbon negative. I would love for that to be a big thing. And this is actually part of our company's articles of incorporation. We seek to inspire responsible, sustainable business practices globally. And we're trying to show other companies that you can do the right thing and make money still. We're not a nonprofit. We are a for-profit business, but we are a public benefit corporation. And it is our stated mission to take care of the planet. The planet Earth is our biggest and most important stakeholder at the end of the day. And that drives real business decisions for us. In terms of where we are in the market and other companies and competitors, the lab grown space is heating up. There are new entrants coming in and establishing diamond growing laboratories, but they're making regular lab grown diamonds made from fossil fuels. So I think we're kind of uniquely positioned. We are the first company to come out and make diamonds made from thin air, and be on the market. And we've been off to a good start. We've done millions of dollars in pre-orders. Our wait list is continuing to grow. We're getting ready to ship our first product out the door very soon. So it's exciting to be first to market. But we need to see what comes kind of behind that, and I think we'll know a lot more by the end of this year as to where we sit in the market compared to everybody else.
Yeah.
But like I said, I do hope to inspire people. I do hope that they can look at us and say, hey, it is possible to do good for the planet and do good financially. And that's something that we're already kind of showing is a viable path to commercializing a product like this.
So maybe a last question for this section of the interview. What are the next steps for the company now? You guys, I think, recently raised a round of funding. Where are you guys going next in the next 6 to 12 months?
So yeah, we just closed a round of funding. We brought on some phenomenal investors. We actually haven't formally announced that yet. I know you and I had discussed it, and I've shared it with some people, but there will be a formal press release, and we'll kind of talk about who's backing us and why we're excited to be working with them. Next steps here is we're going to be growing the team a little bit, bringing on some more talent. It takes a village to do something like this, and
Yeah.
and we need to make sure that people who are contributing to this effort are aligned with our mission. If anyone is listening and are intrigued by our mission, I do encourage you to reach out. You can reach out at careers@aetherdiamonds.com. But besides that, really, it's just increasing production capacity. Our number one concern right now is, can we make diamonds fast enough to meet the demand? Because the current level of demand we're seeing well exceeds our production capacity. So we do aim to increase our production capacity by at least 10x this year alone. By next year, I'd like to double or maybe even triple that. So we have exciting times ahead. I think the next 6 months are going to be really fast paced, and I look forward to bringing a lot more people into the mix as we grow our team.
Congratulations. That's very exciting. Congrats. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your amazing experience. Ryan, it was really a pleasure.